So the first thing that we need to understand is, who are we? We are stud or seed stock cattle breeders. So what does that mean? It means that we need to produce the genetics for other stud breeders, commercial breeders, etc., to improve their herd. So that's what we are as stud breeders. So we selectively make animals with desirable genetic traits to maintain or enhance these traits in future generations. So in short, we want to mate a bull with a cow and produce offspring that is better or similar to the parents for the traits of importance. So the aim is to improve our animals by changing their genetic abilities for the traits of importance. And it's also important to just keep in mind that the traits of importance may change over time. So one trait might be important for us now commercially, but in a few years' time, other traits might be the drivers of profit. So we always need to keep that in mind. So how do I decide which bull and cow to mate? To ensure that aim of mine to have progeny that performs better or similar for the traits of importance. So how do I select those animals? So we can look at pedigrees. So related animals have related performance as the genetic potential is passed on from generation to generation. So that's why it's important and useful for us to record those pedigrees. So keeping performance information, pedigree information is helpful. The challenge we have with just using pedigree information is we do not know which genetics my animal that I am considering to select for mating inherited from his ancestors. So he might be a grandson from one of the famous bulls that were famous for one or other trait. For example, these are in this pedigree. There's a lot of famous animals. Michifuku, for example, that's known for marbling. But is my animal now, this animal here, does he carry the genetics for marbling as well? I'm not 100% convinced with just the pedigree information. We need to have some more information. So there's too much variation that we see in our offspring because there's influence from many animals and lines within this animal's pedigree. And we also need to always keep in mind that the cow's genetics also influences the calf's performance. It's not just the bull. So there's too much room for wrong selections if I only use pedigrees. So what's the next option we have is to do performance recording. And yeah, especially for the traits that we see that is of importance and which is economically valuable. So what is performance recording? It's physically measuring or recording that trait. It can be weight, it can be carcass traits, it can be fertility traits, etc. So if we do performance recording, we then know a bit more about the animal's performance, and therefore we can make some interpretations of how other related animals should perform. Raw measurements So what does raw measurements mean? Those measurements that I physically take on farm or at the abattoir, those physical measurements is the raw measurements. We should use this with caution. And the reason for this is, there's always an environmental influence. And then, if we look at this question, does the same trait measurement mean the same genetic potential? So for example, I have these two bulls. At the same time period for 400-day weights, their weight was almost the same. So does it mean that genetically they have the same potential to perform at 400 days? Or after slaughter, they both had a marbling score of 6. Does that mean that they have the same genetic potential for marbling? And the short answer for that is not necessarily, because what I measure or see in the animal is due to portionally due to the genetics of that animal for that specific trait and the environmental influence on that performance. So for example, an animal will have the genetic potential to grow, but if there's no feed available or sufficient feed available, he will not grow to his full genetic potential. And on the other hand, we might have an animal that do not have good genetics to grow, but they were excellent feeding, and then he did grow. So we need to distinguish between the genetics and the environmental component. And if we select animals, only the genetics will be passed on to the offspring. The environmental component is not passed on to the offspring. So we always need to keep this in mind. The phenotypic variation, that what we see or measure in the animal, is a product of the genetics of the animal and the environmental component. So that raw measurement is not equal to the genetic potential of that animal. There's always that environmental component that we need to try to exclude. So if an animal has a high weight or a good marbling score, etc., it does not necessarily mean that the genetics is excellent for that trait. If we only look at the raw values. So a concept that I'm going to refer to is heritability. So heritability is the portion of that phenotypic variant or the variation that I see within animals or measure within animals that is due to the animal's genetics and will be passed on to the offspring. It varies from 0 to 1. If it's closer to 0, the environment plays an important role in the performance of the animal. If it's closer to 1, the animal's genetics determine the performance of that animal. So most of our traits of economical importance range between 0 and 1, and we'll look at a few heritabilities just now. What's important to understand is that it's a population measure. So a specific animal does not have a heritability for a trait, but a population, for example, Wagyu South Africa, the animals have, or the population has a heritability, for example, for weaning weight or carcass size, etc. So if we quickly look at a number of the traits that we observe in our animals. The reproduction traits normally are low to mediumly heritable. What that implies is that the environment has a big influence on the performance of my animals for reproduction. Growth, medium to highly heritable. Carcass traits, medium to highly heritable. What that means is that the genetics of the animal plays a big role in the performance, and the environment plays a lesser role. So how do I exclude these environmental effects out of my raw performance information before I can use them for selection? And the answer to that is to use estimated breeding values. So what we have here is the simple calculation of the EBV. It's not exactly what they, or not the only thing that they do, or calculation that they do in a genetic evaluation, but this is the basic calculation within the analysis. So you have the weight of the individual, or the scrotal measurement, or the marbling score of the individual animal versus the weight of the group, and we'll look later on at specifically what that group is. How do we group those animals, times the heritability. So in this example, 400-day weight, the animal's weight is 380 kilograms. The average of the group is 350. The difference is 30 kilograms, times the heritability is 9 kilograms. So I expect my animal to produce offspring that is on average 9 kilograms heavier at 400-day weight than the average. This is the simple calculation. What is important here to realize is that weight that I include in the calculation is the performance records that breeders submit to the society, and those records form the cornerstone of any genetic evaluation. And that is, yeah, very important to realize. If we do not have those performance records, we cannot do the EBV estimations. So as you know, we have a whole range of EBVs available for the Wagyu Society. And for all of these traits, we need the underlying performance information of as many animals as possible. So in the first line, you have your EBV value, and then you will see the accuracies. And we'll look at the accuracy just now. It's expressed in percentage. Just for clarity's sake, if you see traits analyzed and you see birth weight, 200-day weight, 400-day weight for a specific animal, you know that that animal was physically measured for those traits, and those measurements were included in the analysis. So to further explain what EBVs are the animal's genetic merit or value as a parent. And if you see that, immediately you know that I can use that to select my bull and my cow, because it gives me information on the value of that animal as a parent. So we can use the estimated breeding values to make that selection decision. It gives you an indication of the difference between an animal's genetic and the genetic base to which that animal is compared. That genetic base can be the average of the breed society, or it can be just another animal. So I have two bulls, and I can see what the difference in those two animals' genetic potential is for a specific trait. what is important to always keep in mind is that this is an estimate. We will never know the true or exact breeding value of an animal, but we can get close to that as we have more information. And this will change as we include more information on this animal specifically, its progeny and other related animal. And this is performance information, so measurement. If we include that in the analysis, the animal's EBV will change. So you will see this month EBV with this EBV run, the animal's EBV for a specific trait will be a specific value. But if you add more information to an analysis the next month, the EBV will change. But you will see the accuracy will increase. So what sources of information is used to create or to calculate this EBVs? When my animal is young and I do not have records on that specific animal itself, we use the pedigree information, and that is the biggest source of information for that animal. When the animal is physically measured for the trait himself, that is also included in the analysis. And then once I use that animal in my herd to produce offspring, and I performance record those offspring, their information becomes more and more important. And in some point in time, if I have lots of progeny, their performance information is the biggest source that is used in the evaluation. So now we get to the accuracies of the EBVs. So the accuracies gives us an indication of the amount of performance information that is available to calculate that specific animal's EBV. So the more information available, the higher the accuracy of those EBVs, and the higher the accuracy, the higher the likelihood that that EBV is to predict an animal's true breeding value. And there's less chances that that EBV will change as we add information. So more accurate selection decisions can be made. So if I think back again about my cow and my bull, if I make those two animals, if they have high accurate EBVs, I have more certainty that the progeny will perform as I expect. As I mentioned previously, it's reported as a percentage. How do we interpret these accuracy levels? So 0 to 40% is still very low. It's a preliminary estimate, and it can change substantially as we add more performance information. 41 to 65 is still low, but you can start to use that VV. And normally we have the animal's own performance included in the analysis. 65 to 80%, there is some progeny performance now included, more reliable. 80 to 95 is high, and it's unlikely that the EBV will change much. And then with my highly used bulls, we get to EBV accuracies of more than 95%, and you can then know that the EBV is close to the animal's true breeding value. The other question is, can I only select for the one, or actually record the one or two traits that is important to me? And there's various ways to look at it, but we need to realize that all of these traits are integrated with each other. Genetically, they are correlated to one or other extent. And this is normally due to underlying genetics or genes that influence more than one trait. So what happens is, if I record and select for one trait, this will cause changes in other traits. And often these changes are undesirable and will in the end lead to problems. So first off, these correlations can be positive. What that means is, as you increase one trait, you will also increase the other trait. Or they can be negatively correlated. As you increase the one trait, the other trait will decrease. So let's look at a few examples. So for example, birth weight, weaning weight, and actually most of your growth traits are genetically correlated with one another. So as you select now for higher weaning weights and you do not look at your birth weights will also automatically increase. And if you just keep selecting for weaning weight, your birth weights might increase so much that you have dystocia issues, calving issues. So that's the problem. If we only select for one trait, only measure weaning weight, for example. There's correlation between birth weight and calving ease. As we increase those birth weights, the calving ease will decrease. There's a correlation between scrotal size in my bulls and the age at puberty in my female offspring. So as we increase scrotal size, the age of puberty of the female offspring will decrease. Then, as I mentioned, other growth traits. So if I select for higher 400-day weights, 600-day weights, because I want to increase the carcass size, I will also increase my mature cow weight. And that leads to higher maintenance requirements for my female herd. Then we have in our carcass traits, we also have a few correlations. For example, eye muscle area and marbling is negatively correlated. So as I select for bigger carcasses, bigger eye muscle areas, the marbling will decrease. And there's also a correlation between marbling and 400-day weight. As we increase those weights, marbling will go down. So some of these correlation is favorable, something that we would want, and others are antagonistic. We do not want them. So if we only measure and select the traits that we are interested in, we might run into issues. We saw that in, for example, the dairy industry, they chased milk production so much that fertility went down all the way that they are now focusing on fertility and still also on milk production, but they are now focusing on fertility more. So it's very important that we measure as many traits as possible. I'm not sure where these lines came now on my screen and how to remove them. Hopefully it doesn't bother you too much. So luckily, the genetic correlation between these traits are not 100%. So that might be 60% correlated or 30% correlated, etc. And what that implies is that if I record both of those traits, I will be able to identify curve benders. And what curve benders are is, for example, animals with low birth weights and high weaning weights, or high carcass weights but good marbling as well, etc. So if I record both traits or as many traits as possible, it is or yeah, I will be able to identify the curve benders. So if you do not record both traits and only select for the one, the other will change as well. And this can be undesirable. So if we look at performance recording and doing performance recording, it's very important to also look at the quality of the data. So quality is important. If we look at the genetic evaluation, I need to make sure that the time and effort I put into recording traits, those traits will actually be included in the analysis and be of value to me. So the first thing that I need to keep in mind is that traits should be recorded within contemporary groups. So quickly, what is the contemporary group? So breed plan analyzes cattle in contemporary groups to take out as many of the non-genetic or environmental effects as possible. So if I look at my calculation here, that group that we mentioned there, that's the contemporary group. So breed plan only directly compare animals within these contemporary groups. The larger the contemporary groups, the more informative it is. So quickly, how do breed plan construct contemporary groups? They look at your herd, the calving year. So only animals born in 2021 will be directly compared to each other. Only bulls with bulls, heifers with heifers, or cows with cows. So not across sexes. For you guys that do embryo transfers, embryo calves will only be directly compared to other ET calves and not to your normal conceived calf. And then they also bring the age of the dam, so first time calvers, etc. They also bring that into consideration. The other thing that they look at is the calf age. So they analyze or compare animals directly to each other that were born in a specific time period from each other. So for birth weight and weaning weight, they only use 45-day slice groups. So what this means is, for example, if your first calf in the season was born on the 1st of September, they look at a 45-day slice to round about the 15th of October, and they directly compare those animals to each other. They do this to exclude the seasonal effect on the trait. So for example, your winter-born calves will not be directly compared to your summer-born calves, as the environments will have an influence on the performance of my animals. For the later traits, they increase the slice age or range to 60 days. So that will be September and October calves all together, for example. Other thing that they look at is the weigh date. So they will only directly compare your animals if you weighed or measured them on the same day. And then we have the breeder defined management groups. So if my animal, specific animal, was treated differently than the rest and it did not perform the same or didn't have the same opportunity to perform, we need to indicate that to the system. For example, the animal was severely sick or ill, and that animal could not gain the same weight as the rest of the animals, we should put that animal in a separate management group. Or you have a group of weaners. The one group you feed extra or give some pre-feeding and the other group not. we need to then tell the system, these animals were treated differently, so please treat them differently in the genetic evaluation as well. So the idea of a contemporary group is that all the animals in that group need to have the same opportunity to perform. So we indicate the different management groups with 1 to 9 or A to Z maximum of 3 characters. If you leave it blank, the system will treat them as one group. So if you use the Excel spreadsheets, you fill that in column G, just a 1 or a 2, etc. Or if you, for example, use a herd management program like Herdmaster, you will put it in your performance group. So the idea is to keep the contemporary groups as large as possible. So we can do that by doing whole herd recording, keep our mating and calving seasons as compact as possible, weigh all the animals on the same day, AI the cows so that they calve with the natural mated cows. If you have 2 different herds registered at the society, but they are run on the same property, make sure that they link them at the society so that those animals can be analyzed together. So the next thing that we need to look at for performance or the quality of the performance data is to do whole herd recording as far as possible. So not only select the best animals or the animals with the best weights and submit that to the society, that leads to bias. So for example, if we have a group of 10 weaners, we weigh them all, the average is, for example, 233 kilograms. If we exclude the lighter ones, the average increases, and then we discriminate against some of the animals. For example, there's A7. If we record all the weaning weights of the animals, he would have been 4 kilograms heavier than the average. If we exclude those lighter ones and the average increases, he is then 50 kilograms lighter than the average, and that will influence his EVB. So as far as possible, do whole herd recording, because we want to identify those best animals as far as possible. The next thing that we need to look at is the appropriate age ranges when doing performance recording. So I'm not going to go through all of these now, but make sure that you know when to weigh the animals for 200-day weight, for 400-day weight, etc. There's specific age ranges that breed plan gives. The next thing that we need to keep in mind with regards to the quality of performance records is make sure there's genetic linkage between my contemporary groups, over years, over herds, etc. And genetic linkage is normally created with using sires across groups or herds, etc. And yeah, so breed plan uses these genetic linkages between the group and herds and years, etc., to exclude the environmental effect further. So for example, my herd that's in the free state, we can now directly or compare the EBVs with animals in the Western Cape or the Northern Cape, because we have excluded the environmental effects using the linkage sires, or it can be cows as well, but normally it's sires. So what the system does is it looks at the performance of this linkage sire compared to the progeny of a local sire within my herd, and see, do my bull's progeny perform better or worse than this linkage sire, and then they can rank these animals. So we see the progeny difference for sire C is much higher than the rest. So if we rank the bulls, he will be number 1. Sire A's progeny performed better than the linkage sire as well. So he will be in 2nd place. The linkage sire will be the base. And in this case, he's in 3rd place, as sire B actually performed, or his progeny performed worse than the linkage sire. I'm quickly going through this because, yeah, we can do this in detail, but we do not have the time. What is important to realize is to make use of AI sires that other herds use as well, so that we can create these genetic linkages. Most importantly, we can collect all these performance information and we can keep it on our records, but it is very important that we actually submit the records to the society so that it can be included in the genetic evaluation. And ensure that you submit the records in the correct format. There's various formats that you can submit them to the society. Contact the society office for these different formats. Do it in a timely manner, not just before a sale, because you need to remember now it needs to be imported in the system, and breed plan need to do a new breed plan run or genetic evaluation, which is done on a monthly basis for those new records to be included. So if you do have a sale coming up, make sure all the animals' performance records are included in the analysis beforehand, so we have up-to-date EVV at the time of the sale. And then regularly to ensure that your animals' EVVs stay up to date. So my take-home message today is the following. No genetic selection can take place if you do not do performance recording. Raw phenotypic records should be used with caution, as we now know that there's always an environmental effect, whether it's the feed, supplement, the temperature, humidity, etc. There's always a environmental influence on the raw performance records, and if we want to select those animals based on their genetics, we need to exclude those environmental effects. Performance records are the cornerstone of any genetic evaluation. Even if we move over to genomically enhanced EVVs or GVVs, where we include the genetic profiles of the animals as well. Even then, performance records will be the most important part of the genetic evaluation. So we need to keep on recording our animals. The quality of the performance records are very important. We need to make sure that what we measure and submit to the society is actually what breed plan will include in the analysis. Always do performance recording within those contemporary groups. So those animals born on your farm within a certain period, keep them in a group and performance record them all as far as possible, even for your more difficult to measure traits, like your net feed intake, etc. We need to record as many animals as possible for the carcass traits as well. We cannot send one animal to the abattoir and then think that it will be valuable information that comes out of the records that they take at the abattoir. I need to just at least send 5 to 10 animals to make sure the information is valuable. So in conclusion, it costs time and often money to record these performance information, but it costs more time and more money if we make the wrong selection decision. So yeah, that's in short my story today. So thank you for your time. And yeah, the floor is now open for questions.
So the first question that we often receive is, if I genotype my herd, do I still need to do performance recording?
Thank you, Landry, for that question. And the answer is yes. In big fat letters, yes. We always need to keep performance recording our animals. And the reason for that is if we move over to GEBV, we always will need that link between the genetics and the performance record. And if we often talk about the reference population, that is animals that have genotypes and phenotypes or measurements, we need to keep those links relevant within the population. It doesn't help you if you have a lot of old animals with genotypes and measurements, but the new animals coming into the breed does not have phenotypes, because the genetics changes over the years as you select, and the scientists need to know that if they see this genetic, they can expect this level of performance. So we will always need to keep performance recording our animals.
Thank you, Izon. Another question is, you've mentioned a lot of traits in your talk, and you've spoken about genetic correlation, but recording measurements or traits can sometimes be difficult. So how do I as a breeder decide which traits do I record on my farm?
Okay, so yeah, that's a difficult question, in the sense that the ability to record traits differs between herd to herd. So if you have a scale, for example, you can do all the weight measurements, and then the biggest decision you need to make, or thing that you need to incorporate, is what is the traits that my buyers look at, and what's the most important traits for them, and to record those. But as I mentioned, the traits of importance often change. So if there's a change in the trait of importance, and you do not have the records, you will then need to build the records within your herd. And if you have done records on those traits, you can easily move over to the other traits. But yeah, as far as possible, record as many traits as possible. It's not often, yeah.
Then tell me, when I start performance recording, how often do I need to record these traits? Is it, say, worth it to record maybe this year and then use those traits or those records as like a prediction for coming years, or what would you suggest on that?
Okay, so first your question on how often do you record the traits? So if you look at those age ranges for the different traits that you need to record, you will see that you can, if you record your whole herd twice a year, you will catch most of those traits. So for example, when you measure your animals for weaning, the other animals will be ready for 600-day weight. And in 6 months' time, those animals will now be ready for 400-day weight, etc. So you actually only need to set out 2 dates a year to do performance recording, except now for your traits that you do not record on farm, like the net feed intake and the carcass traits, etc. But the rest of them, you can set 2 dates a year and you will be able to record all your animals. Your second question with, can I collect traits this year and never again, or leave it for the next 2 years? Again, as we saw with the calculation, the performance information that goes into a specific animal EBV is those of his performance and related animals. So if I do not record the animal itself or progeny or the parents, etc., the information that I might have recorded on other animals in my herd will not be valuable for that specific animal. So yeah, I hope I answered your question.
So in other words, consistency is important. If you decide to put this trait, to consistently measure that trait the same way at the same time is important in order for you to get the most out of the effort that you're putting in.
Yeah, and to make sure that the EBVs in the end of the day is accurate and worth using for selection.
I'm still not seeing anybody asking questions. Mario, yes, welcome, Mario. Mario is the new chairman of not the chairman, the executive officer for the LRF. Welcome, Mario, and please, what question do you have for Izan?
Good morning, Alandri. Good morning, everybody, and well done to Izan. Excellent, and I appreciate a lot to digest. I don't have a question. I would just want to emphasize something that Izan brought up on the first slide, and it actually touches on some of the questions you raised. And I think it's important we understand we are stud breeders, we are seed stock, and the first thing that, and I know Wagyu already have it, is, but I think you need to revisit it with your members, is your breeding objectives. What are your goals? And where do you see your breed? Where do you see your breed today? Where do you see it going? What are the challenges, not only for you as a breeder, but compared to other breeds and compared to other meats? You've got to understand we're in that market. And that will dictate to a degree what you record. And I liked the way Izan tackled it. You don't need to make it difficult. And I certainly would recommend you look at recording your weights, for example, twice a year, and you'll capture quite a lot. But, you know, let's look at Wagyu. Wagyu is a specialized animal that has a special niche market. And one of the big things in rearing this animal is you feed it for, if I'm not mistaken, 800 days or something. So to me, a big thing is going to be feed efficiency. So what are you doing as breeders and a society to make sure you are looking at the animal of the future and selecting for feed efficient animals that are going to give you the best marbled carcasses? So what I'm trying to say is, revisit your goals, discuss them with your breeders, and those will help you dictate. So what Izan didn't really go to town on, she gave a comprehensive thing, but we can look at 7 broad categories of traits. Firstly, your animal details, or basically the sire, dam, the pedigree, okay? Weights, and that is something that we often talk about, that's quite easy. Fertility. We really need to bring this home. We really only have 2 traits that we can look at quite easily, scrotal circumference and days to calving. So we need to look at that. Then we need to come and think about feed efficiency. Now we're coming on to traits that are expensive and difficult to measure, and I fully appreciate this, but we need to focus. Feed efficiency. The other thing is carcass traits, and we can do that on the live animal, and we can use scanning. So that's something else that you really need to start looking at, because and as Izan said, this is high heritability. And we can scan the males and the females, even the heifers that you're not going to slaughter. It will give me genetic information. Meat quality, I don't know to what degree this is an issue with Wagyu. And then, of course, there's a whole host of others, temperament, sheath, height, and stuff like that. So breeding objective, what are your goals? And then Izan did talk about multiple selection, and she didn't touch on another big subject, is index selection. But you can only really build your index once you've got your breeding objectives. And you can't build your breeding objective, your selection index, until you've got decent measures on the important traits. And the big one is fertility. I can't build a selection trait because fertility is an overriding factor on efficiency of production of an enterprise. So that's another observation I just wanted to make. And those are just some of the observations that immediately come to mind.
Absolutely right. Thank you, Maria. I think the essence here is comprehensiveness, to understand what it is you're measuring and why you're measuring those traits and what it is that you'd like to achieve. As Maria mentions, this actually goes far deeper than just growth traits. And Izan, just tell me a little bit, the breed plan, which is the system that Wagyu Society through the LRF actually uses to help breeders with this. And they have something called completeness of performance, which addresses comprehensiveness in recording. Would you maybe just summarize that for us?
Okay, so yes, Ilandri, breed plan has a tool that we can use to see the completedness or how complete a specific herd records the performance records. How we can see which herds do complete performance recording is the completeness of performance star ratings. So what happens is breed plan looks at the animals that you register within a specific year. For example, now the 2023 year, they see, okay, you registered all these animals. Now they follow them without throughout the years where you record them and see, okay, these animals have birth weights, weaning weights, 400-day weights, etc. And they give you a rating per year. And they say that, okay, for this year, you recorded 80% of this, 20% of this, etc. And they give you a score out of 5. Saying that, 5 out of 5, you recorded most traits on most animals, 4 out of 5, or 1 out of 5, etc. And then they give you your herder overall completeness of performance score, where they look at the past 5 years average scores, excluding the last 2 years, because you haven't had time to record all the traits on the 2021 and 2022 animals because they are still too young, or 2023 animals now. So yeah, that's in short what the completeness of performance report is.
And sorry, those ratings that you talked about, the star ratings, that is actually available to the public. So if you decide that I want to purchase a bull from this breeder, I can actually go and look on his online profile and see what type of recorder this breeder is. As you said in your presentation, that your number of records influences the accuracy of the EBVs that are calculated in the end for the animals that you're purchasing.
Yes.
I think that is really important to understand, to know that you can be evaluated by your peers, and that you should consider recording as much as possible, not only for yourself, but also for yourself, for your own herd, but also for yourself as as an entrepreneur or a business person, essentially, with the goal of selling your animals. Either you're selling calves to the feedlot or you're selling bulls for commercial users. There was another question that I had. The society only requires certain performance records, such as weaning weights and those sort of things. But is it necessary for a breeder to, say, have intermediate records? So maybe weight records in between the period between birth and wean. What is the value of that recording?
So, Ilandri, yeah, so as your breeders might have seen that even though they do not record specific traits, they do receive EBVs for those traits. And that's due to the genetic linkages between these traits. But you will see that if you do not record a trait, the EBV accuracies will be very low. So immediately, if you only record your weaning weights and not the other traits, you will have accurate EBVs for weaning weight, but not the other. So if you want to select still on, let's say, feed efficiency or scrotal size, but you do not measure it, your accuracy will be very low. So it will probably not be valuable for you in your herd and selecting your animals. So if you want to make accurate selection decisions on your animals, performance recording within your herd is important.
Thank you, Izan. And I see we are running out of time, but just lastly, I don't see any more questions or anybody that has raised their hand. But we did have Maria just speak to us now as well, and both of you are representatives of the LRF. So this is not on performance recording, but just on the LRF for breeder. Could you maybe just quickly tell our breeders who is the LRF and what is it that they do for the breeders?
Thank you, Ilandri. So yes, so the LRF is an umbrella body for a number of breed societies, beef breed societies in South Africa and also Namibia, and we have affiliated members in Zimbabwe as well. So we deliver technical services to our society staff and breeders on breed plan, animal breeding in general, and yeah, that's in short what we do. We do some negotiation for our societies as well with regards to SMP testing at both Unistel and Neogen, etc. So yeah, that's in short what we do.
Thank you, Izan, and thank you for setting your time out for us today. And thank you to everybody who attended. You have to look out for our next seminar. We'll be having one every month. So we invite you all to please come back to the next one. Our next seminar will be with Dr. Donnie. He is a veterinarian and he is going to tell us a bit more about good health management practices. So we will see you at the next one.